Hello, and welcome back to the Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we wrestle with what it means to be a man. Today's culture and society, where so many things have been twisted and pulled away from what they're supposed to be, including strong, righteous, merciful masculinity. The place where we get together as a tribe and refuse to apologize for what we are: strong, dominant, confident men, made in the image and likeness of our Creator and our God. For He made man in His own image, and we don't apologize for how we were made and walking that out. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's just about some circumspection that I had today and a situation or two that recently arose in life that hopefully God will use. I don't exactly know what to title it. Like I said, usually I have a note or two, but I don't have any for this. Why do we prepare? Why do we carry weapons? Why are we watching and being ready? In fact, that's probably going to be the title. Hopefully today we'll get together as a tribe and reason the right way and wrong way to go about things in life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. If you can, hit some stars, whatever app you're listening to this on. If you have a few seconds, write a review of the podcast. That by the will of God, it'll help other people see the podcast and hear the message. We'll plug in the bio and then roll into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, a teacher, a preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, He got me through some nasty places in this world, war zones, and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents He's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, white-tailed deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. and I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, a teacher, a preacher, a fisher of men. With that, we will roll into the day's topic. Let me tell you a story, just as Jesus often told stories to get a point across. But this is a real story, not a parable. Now, I have recently made a friend when I was living off grid in 1.8 million acre wilderness and national forest in Arizona. Now, you can imagine living off grid in an area like that. It attracts some pretty unique people. It attracts people from the left and the right, and I don't really care. I'm not political. I put my faith in God, not in government. But this gentleman, I would say, was from a background with far different political, cultural, and other worldviews than I had. But a very nice guy. And this guy said that he had been interested, especially in the last couple of years, in owning a firearm. He didn't really know anything about them. So I said, I would really like to take you out and take you shooting, as we were, off-grid neighbors, living out our pilgrimage in temporary dwellings in this area. And I said, I'd like to take you out. You see, when God gives you a resource, a blessing, a talent, whether that's a skill or an actual physical resource, this was both. Guns, ammo, and the talent and the ability to use and teach. You should always use that to help others. Gifts and talents are meant to be shared, not hoarded. So I told him, I'll take you out and take you shooting. And I gave him a little quick philosophy on the different types of guns, handguns, rifles, shotguns, rimfires. When we went shooting, we pretty much shot a handgun, a rifle, and a shotgun. And he really enjoyed that. Learned a lot, hopefully. At the end of that, I have a single-shot shotgun that I've talked about on the podcast before that I bought mostly for this purpose. And I said, here's this gun. Would you like to hang on to it for a while? Here's some different kinds of ammo. And he said, sure, yeah, I'd love to hang on to it for a while. So I gave him that and some ammo, and he gave it back to me sometime in the future. He did shoot it and did practice with it. And sadly, he went, well, not sadly, maybe he had a good reason or really enjoyed it, but he went to California and decided he didn't want to take the gun with him. He came back to wherever I was and gave me the gun back, and I was very appreciative of that. If he hadn't, I wouldn't have lost any sleep over it. Anyway, I guess it's been a few weeks, months later, he got into an altercation. And again, remember, this gentleman was very different than me politically, but he went into a private business and told them that for whatever reasons he wasn't going to wear a mask. He said that they were going to throw him out, and I explained to him the different legalities of that and how that was private property and they have every right to refuse service to whomever they want for whatever reason. And there's good and bad to that. But we discussed that, and then he brought up the question, well, what if I had a gun on me? And if when they had tried to force me out, I would have presented that. And I forget my exact words, but they were pretty succinct, I imagine, and wrong answer. That's not why you carry a gun. If you pull a gun out on
a law enforcement officer, an armed security officer, you're probably going to get shot. And if you pulled one on me and that was my job, and I was telling you you were trespassing, for whatever the reason was, once you were decided to be trespassed on private property, or for whatever reason, if you pull a gun out on me, you're probably getting shot. Because that shows me that you're about to use deadly force. I don't know your mindset. I don't know that you're just trying to do it to get your way. That's a pretty clear indication that you pull a gun out that you're about to use it to shoot somebody. And I told him, no, you don't do that. And again, he didn't grow up with guns. He's not a shooter, well, I guess he is now, but I think he just did it out of ignorance. I believe his heart was in the right place. But that kind of sparked me of thinking today about this and discussing it with you men. Because a lot of times I think especially I did growing up a heathen, you see, I didn't grow up a Christian, using violence in the wrong ways. Jesus tells his disciples, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Jesus said this. You can look it up. It's in the Gospel of Luke. You may not hear that preached in a lot of churches, but Jesus said that. He said, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. He also told Peter, when he drew a sword and cut off a servant's ear, no. Basically, this is not the right time for that. There's very clear outlines in the Bible and when God lays out his rules, right times and wrong times to use force against other human beings. Example, if a thief is caught breaking in and struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. If the sun has risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. There's very clear distinctions. If a man strikes his neighbor and he dies, but he does it unintentionally, there were cities of refuge set aside so the manslayer could flee there and live. Society can say, whoever can say whatever garbage things about this not being a Judeo-Christian society, but we are founded by God's grace on Judeo-Christian values and law. Man's law modeling God's law when it's right and just, because God's law is always right and just and true. There's a difference between manslaughter and murder. It also says if a man comes against his neighbor and strikes him and kills him with premeditation, you shall take him from my altar that he may die. There are right and wrong times to use force. So why are we doing it? Why do we carry a handgun? Why do we carry a knife? Why do we carry an AR behind the front seat of our car or a shotgun and laying it between our seat and our center console? Why do we do these things? I would submit, in my opinion, the right reasons to do that is to preserve and protect life. I'll use myself as an example. I'm blessed to be a very good shooter. And I don't take any credit for that. God gave me all the talents and abilities and self-discipline that I have. But, a state rifle and pistol champion a few times over, West Coast regional champion. Got more military and law enforcement experience than the vast majority of the population. If I was in, a downtown area, a mall or whatever, a big box store, take your pick, and somebody just started indiscriminately executing people, and I was just neutered, I just didn't have anything on me, it was just me, and 20 other people got shot while I was just standing around looking for a weapon or whatever. How could I justify that when God's given me all that talent and skill and ability to just stand by while innocent men and women are getting executed? To me, in my opinion, the very clear better thing to do would to be well armed and stop that threat. Stop him from doing his bad behavior. If I stop him and he doesn't die, I don't care. My goal is not to kill that man. My goal is to stop him from doing that behavior that's causing the shedding of blood. And the best tool to do that in today's world that I can have on me is a handgun. So I choose to carry a handgun. And I think if you're an alpha male, you really ought to consider that. It's not so you can use it to force your will on others, is not to be used for intimidation. It's not to be used for coercion. A gun is neither good nor evil. Evil or good doesn't come out of a holster. Evil or good comes out of the heart of a man. There's plenty of people that carry guns for notorious, bad, evil reasons. But you can also carry that sword for good and righteous reasons. Do God's angels not sometimes, are they not recorded as having a sword? Can be a tool for righteousness. The same can be said for lots of things. Why do you carry a knife? It's not so you can do the, Crocodile Dundee thing, where you call that a knife, this is a knife, and, punk the other guy. That's not a thing. That's a Hollywood thing. Knife is a tool. I mean, you could use it for all manner of things. You could use it to cut a victim out of a burning car. How would you feel if you just decided not to carry a knife that day? Have you ever been on the scene of a nasty car accident? I've been on the scene of a few. What if that person was burning to death screaming and you couldn't get him out of there because you just decided, I don't want to carry a knife today? Again, there are right and wrong reasons for carrying a knife. Now, it may be that knife is your only tool for self-defense because you live in a place, a state, a nation state where you've been neutered, where you've had your rights taken away that you should have lawfully. Or maybe that's your best means of defense. But it doesn't matter. It's just, like I said, it's just a tool. Why do you do that? It's just like the old, fire extinguisher analogy. You don't have a fire extinguisher in your house because you want your house to burn down. That's ridiculous. You have a fire extinguisher in your house in case something bad happens, you're prepared for it. The same reason with a knife or a gun. Another big thing for a gun that I would touch on is putting meat on the table. As a man, can you provide for those around you, for yourself? You shall love your neighbor as yourself implies you love yourself too. Can you feed yourself? And can you feed those weaker women and children around you? Can you feed them no matter what? I don't think that I have to convince anybody that we could easily be in a world, especially in the last couple of years, where you can't just go to the store and buy food. What happens if one day you can't, for whatever reason? I don't care what it is, a bad snowstorm, supply chain collapse. Every civilization, great civilization in history, except for the ones right now and present, they've collapsed before. Ones that have lasted far longer than us. Check out Sir John Glubb and the Fate of Empires. Read the Bible and see how many empires in there collapsed. For whatever reason, if you can't go to the store and buy food, can you provide? Can you put meat on the table, literally, for the ones that you love? What if you can't just go to the store and buy food? Now, there's other ways to put meat on the table. I encourage you to know how to garden. I encourage you to know how to raise livestock. I encourage you to know how to go out and forage. I really like going out and foraging. Even in the desert places where I live, I'm fairly confident I can go out and get more food than I can eat in a day. Now, I'd rather go out and rise and kill something and throw it on the table and eat it. I like meat. I don't apologize for killing beasts and eating them. But that's me. That might not be you. And I'm not saying you have to have a gun to do that. Trapping is an important skill. Trapping is great. You should know how to do one of those things. You should be able to feed your family. Even when the wife and I were in the city with, I would think, far above average incomes, living in a large metropolitan area when I was on an active shooter response team, I would trap birds. I would trap birds and eat them. I had plenty of money to go to the store and buy food. I trap birds and eat them so I didn't get rusty in the middle of, an asphalt jungle, a people hive. Could still put meat on the table. So get the skills, whatever skills they are.
can you put meat on the table? That's a good reason to have a gun and a lot of other skills. Not just by watching YouTube or whatever. And watching YouTube is great. It's a great thing today that we can look up a bunch of different topics. It's a great thing that we can listen to each other and learn from each other. But, get your hands dirty. Practice the skill. Could be a lot of different ways. Can you, get a dog and or train your dog to provide food? That's a reason we've been using dogs for a long, long time, for thousands of years. My dog is hanging out with me right now. We've been hunting. He's still a baby, 4.5 months old, but he's learning. I don't imagine there's anywhere where you live, maybe in like a HOA or something, but I don't think there's any nation where you can't have a hunting dog and you could make some kind of weapon to hunt. A lot of times the dog can do the hunting and killing for you and bring it back to you. Look for ways how you can do it. But I think there's right and wrong ways for all kinds of things. As you heard in my bio and as you might surmise, I like guns. I like to shoot guns. I like trying out new guns. But at the end of the day, the gun is just a hunk of metal and plastic. It's just a tool. A knife is a very basic tool that we've been using again for thousands of years. Both are ways to project force and provide. You could use that knife to go out and skin and butcher a deer. Carve it up in a nice little steaks. Throw it on a fire. Feed your family. Or you could use that knife to, rob somebody in an alley in the middle of the night, take their stuff, and get food. One of those is totally good and acceptable and morally right, and one of those is wrong and abhorrible and evil. It could be the exact same knife in both situations. The same with a gun or anything else. I think we could all agree that it'd be foolish to think that you're going to stop evil by banning guns. Not to get too political, but evil's been around a lot longer than guns. It's equally foolish to think that a gun is going to solve all your problems. To think that a gun just makes you right just because you have it. It's equally wrong as it is on the other side when they think that people that carry guns because they're afraid or because they're bullies or whatever reason. Again, there are right and wrong reasons. Let he who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. And then he tells Peter, put your sword in the sheath. There are right and wrong times. Maybe it'd be good for all of us men to reason with ourselves. Spend a little bit less time focused on the actual thing. The gun, the knife, the ballistics chart that this round is 150 feet per second faster than another. This gun holds 3 more rounds than another gun. Not that you can't think about those things or make wise decisions, being a good steward of the resources you've been given. But maybe spend a little bit more time reasoning about the right and wrong situations and perspective, when it's good and bad, when it's good or evil, to use force or not use force, the right and wrong reasons, to watch and be ready. Jesus tells us to watch and be ready. I don't know what the future holds. You don't know what the future holds. Our society could collapse tomorrow. It could go along for another 1,000 years. Supply chains could collapse today, and there'd be no more food in the stores in a week. And in a week, we could be back in the dark ages with no electricity. There's plenty of things that could happen to cause that. Or, tomorrow, some new inventor in his basement could invent some kind of alternative energy that powers all the world's needs, and we launch into a new level of human civilization. Now, I certainly don't know or can't see the future. Jesus himself says, no one knows but God alone the day or the hour. So maybe less important to try and predict the future, more important to do what you're told by the one who does know what's coming, the only one that can protect you, the only one that can save you, whatever happens. I'd submit that is far more important.
So I guess the ultimate why to watch and be ready is because you're told to by the one who made you, by the one who saved you. Let he who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. I guess that'll be a wrap up for the topic. I want to say thanks for listening. As far as updates go, I'm recovering from a fairly severe injury. I don't know how much I'm going to share about that, but by God's grace, I am still alive, and I am back walking again, and God willing, we'll have a full and speedy recovery. On a lighter note, a puppy update. Alexander Hamilton is, last time we weighed him a few days ago, 63 pounds. She's gained almost a pound a day. My wonderful wife is very much smitten with our puppy. She loves him very much. His training is coming along well. He's not perfect, but he does very well with sit and down, as in lay down and stay. We've gotten to the point where we can put his favorite treats in front of him and he does not move until we tell him to get them. He's doing very well, but still very much a puppy with a puppy attention span. I'm watching him outside right now playing with one of his best friends, wrestling around and playing tug of war. Update on the podcast. We have, mostly my wife. She's very much better at this than me, doing the logistic stuff behind merchandise. So by God's grace, hopefully we'll have merchandise soon. Alpha Male coffee cups, Alpha Male t-shirt, or shirts. My plan is to offer those first to the patrons at just a little over cost, because it actually does cost money to get out the merch, and then to offer it up to everybody else after that, because I found out in doing it that it doesn't just cost the money for the merch, it costs money to put it on the website and things like that. So there is some cost in it. So if it doesn't bear fruit, I don't want to take away from the earnings of the podcast and the ability of the podcast to put out merchandise. But if enough people buy it, then hopefully we'll continue to do it. So we'll see. It might just be a temporary thing where we do it and see how it does. You know, as God says, as Jesus says, a tree is known by its fruit. So if it bears fruit, we'll keep it. And if it doesn't, we'll dig it up and get rid of it. But if you've been waiting for doing Patreon, like I said, hopefully we'll announce it to the patrons first. So if that's something, if you don't want to just support the message just for the sake of supporting the message, maybe you want to do that. And then after that, if you want the merchandise, we'll offer it up to everybody else as well. I think it's only fair to offer it to the patrons first. And again, if you want to support, you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com. That's your one-stop shop, goodshepherdtraining.com. It's real easy. There's a Patreon link right on there. For the fraction of the cost there of a box of ammo or the normal expensive city cup of coffee, you can support the message. And if you don't want to, don't feel guilty about it. If you want to support in other ways, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, leave a review, hit a couple of stars depending on the platform you're listening to this on, and just write a quick review. And that applies to this podcast, also Gunfighter Life, and if you care about the important stuff, Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. All right, alpha males, couple of announcements. Very blessed to announce that we have mugs available. Alpha male mugs, metal coffee cups. Now, my go-to coffee cup every day is a metal coffee cup. I don't have the alpha male one yet because I ordered the first one and I don't have it yet. But we have those available. They're good for just drinking coffee around the house. They're good for heating stuff on an open flame. They're good for shaving. They're good for all kinds of stuff. I use my metal cup for all of the above. Very happy to announce that and some other merch that we have, and we're going to have more in the store. So go to goodshepherdtraining.com. If it's on the phone, you go to the little shop thing. The little drop-down menu says shop. If you're on the computer, it should just have a thing that has it on there. But very blessed to announce that, and a big thank you to my wife who helped me through all the logistical stuff of that. That being said, if this bears fruit, we'll keep it, but I don't want to take away from the podcast because it does cost money to get the merch going and to sell it on the website. So if it doesn't support itself, because I don't want to take money away from the podcast, then it's going to go away. So if you want it, get it. Because I have to sell a certain amount for it to bear fruit and actually make any money or even break even. If not, it's just costing money from the other things of the podcast, and I don't want that. But if you want that stuff, go check it out. Again, goodshepherdtraining.com. Go to the shop part. Also, stay tuned for coming up episode on gunfighter life. Got a really good guest, Steve Clifford, a scout rifle expert. We have a really good episode on the scout rifle, very in-depth. I think you guys will all like it if you're into guns at all. Oh, and just disclosure, at the end of the year, for the first time ever, there was money left over. So for years, we just did this at a deficit. I just paid out of my own pocket to have the podcast. This year, there's actually some money left over from the revenue. I used that amount and bought a new phone on eBay because I had an iPhone 6S, I believe, or 6S Plus or something. It was like 7 years old, and it was getting to the point where it wouldn't take updates. And I do a lot of my business and a lot of my recording and stuff on the phone, and it was getting to the point where a lot of times I would try to do something, and it would say storage is full. So I used some of the money to buy a used phone on eBay to update. Now I have an iPhone 10, and I don't have to charge it like 4 or 5 times a day. So thank you to all the patrons for that. That is a blessing. Anyway, just some full disclosure and some updates there. Oh, and I also bought a Magpul case for like $20-something. Well, enough of the updates. How about a tip? I suppose with that, we'll roll into the tactical tip of the day, and that is going to be Mayday rations, or Coast Guard rations. I think Mayday is a brand. There's probably other brands that make them. Mayday is the ones that I know. Talking about watching and being ready, I think as a lot of alpha males, we tend to gear towards like guns and knives and tactical stuff. But you can't eat those. And hunting takes skill, and if you don't have that, and even if you do have that, what if you're injured or something? Can you feed yourself and your family and those around you through many different means? And the big advantage of the Mayday rations is they come in different portions, but the ones that I like, each bar has 3 days worth of calories, and the bar is not very big. I'm not measuring them. I got a bunch in the closet, but they're probably about 6 by 6 by an inch or two deep for 3 days worth of food. And the cool thing about those is they're not the cheapest way to store food. Probably the most condensed way to store food. Each one has like 3,600 calories. You can buy them by the case, and even somebody that lives in an apartment or lives in a tiny house, a very tiny dwelling like my wife and I do, you can fit a year's worth of supply in those pretty easily, and you can put a couple months just in your car, in your trunk if you've got spare room in there, depending on what you drive, behind the seat of your truck, whatever. So they're a very condensed way to have a lot of calories. They also have vitamins and minerals already in them, so you're not going to get scurvy or whatever. Anyway, the Mayday rations or the Coast Guard rations, pretty cool way to pack a lot of calories into a little bit of space. Caveat, I've never actually eaten those because I generally eat fat and protein for diet. I don't generally eat carbs as a source of calories, so I don't generally eat them. They have quite a bit of carbs and sugar in there, but trust me, if the economy collapses and I can't go get food, I'm sure they'll be just fine. With that, guys, I want to say thanks for listening and have a blessed day.